Hello, hello, hello. It's that time again. It's here. It's the HotHouse PMO with the House of PMO and HotPMO. Hopefully you're all right. Let's get kicked off for today and let's see what we've got coming up. Oh, that didn't work, did it? I tell you what, hello everybody. Let's do that again, shall we?
Let's do it. At least we're not live, eh? Because that'd be
Oh,
terrible.
we are live. We are live. And you know what? This happens to the best of people out there. I've noticed on on TVs and what have you. With just a little bit of a technical problem, but yeah. Shall we try that again? Yes. Shall
Give
we
it a go, see what happens.
Right. Okay. So it is HotHouse. It is the monthly PMO show. Let's get going. Hello, hello, hello. I hope you're all well. We've got another great show lined up for you. It's Fast and Furious. This is the one where we do live stream. So hi, if you're watching on LinkedIn or YouTube. We also got an audience here as well. Today's session, slightly different. We're going to mix it up a little bit, but that's the whole point. We've got some different kind of sections for you. We're going to be looking at Jargon Buster, hot skills, what's hot and what's not. But we're going to be very open to ask the audience, which hopefully you'll be able to get involved. We've got a few interactive bits there, and then we finish up with Blaze of Glory. So how are you all doing? How are you, Eileen? How are you, John? How are you getting on?
I am fantastic. I'm just gearing up to go on holiday. Actually, I don't know if anybody else is, but my kids watched a TV show called Race Around the World about a month ago. They got very excited and very inspired, and they wanted to kind of pack their bags and head off for Singapore over road and rail immediately. Managed to calm them down a bit, so we're going sort of interrail down through Europe and across to Croatia and back again. So that's our adventure, and we're leaving from St Pancras on Saturday evening, so very exciting.
Hey, okay, lovely.
Wow.
Eileen, how are you getting on? You all right?
Yes, busy. Lots of things coming up. Particularly, we're kicking off at the House of PMO. We're kicking off our service contract. The review of the text starts on Tuesday night, so that's going to be a piece of work that we're doing over the next kind of 12 to 15 months. So, looking forward to kicking that off with the team. And for anybody who's interested in joining, don't feel as though you've missed the boat. There's going to be plenty to do for the next kind of 12 months or so to get the revised publication sorted, and you can get your name in there and contribute. So get in touch. It's on the House of PMO website. I'll find the link when we go into the session.
Okay, all right, super. So let's get cracking then. So we've got first. It's all about jargon busting, and John, you're taking the hot seat for this one. So come on then, what jargon are we going to be busting today?
We are going to be busting safe today. So how this came about, this concept, this came about when we were at the PMO conference and we did HotHouse Live. I don't know if anyone here was at that event, but basically we did the hot or not, which is our regular segment. We did that in front of a live audience where they were holding up red and green cards about things being hot or not. And we mentioned safe scaled agile framework, and it got a massive negative thumbs down from everybody there, which threw me a bit, because in my mind it's always been a case of, well, I get why developers don't like safe, because they like to be in a very, very agile environment, and the more control, dare I say, bureaucracy and things that you put around their ability to just sit down and code without anyone getting in their way, they don't tend to like. And I get that, but then why would PMO people not be liking it, given that it's something that is supposed to give us more control, more structure and everything at an organizational level? So that really, really threw me. So I just wanted to, and I've spoken to a few people since, and I'm not sure everyone had a common understanding of what safe was. So I thought we'd talk about that a little bit today. And I've not done slides quite deliberately for this one, because I want to give you access. I want you to look at the website that's in front of me, because this is super, super accessible and you can play around with this yourself. I say it's super accessible. I entirely acknowledge that this looks very, very scary. There's a lot of information on a page there. And I think this is where most people start with SAFE. They look at this image and they go, I've got no idea what's going on there. It's a bit too crazy and I don't want to deal with it. So let me just give you a flavor of what SAFE is. Everything with SAFE has kind of come bottom up. So you're starting off with this idea of a scrum team. These small teams that work amongst themselves, they agree what they're doing in a 2-week sprint. It's normally 2 weeks. They'll agree what they're going to deliver. The team will lock themselves away. They'll do that work. They'll talk to a product owner and make sure they understand exactly what they're doing. And then at the end of that 2 weeks, they go, ta-da, here's what we've done. What do you think? Do you like it? How does this affect our backlog going forwards? Do we need to bring other things in, move other things down and adjust? And then we kind of carry on going with the next sprint and the next sprint. And for a small team, that works really well. For a tiny organization, that works really well when you've got one dev team. But what about when you're in a large organization and you've got multiple teams doing lots of different things, and those teams have dependencies against each other and they're competing for resources? And then you get into a problem where Agile, in terms of Scrum, doesn't really work for you because it's designed for small teams. So there's then been a whole load of ideas that different consultancies have come up with for how we scale Agile. So this is one, SAFE, the Scaled Agile Framework. There's also Disciplined Agile. There's LESS. There's quite a few of these different approaches that are around, and they've all evolved over time. Now, SAFE here starts with, at the bottom here, you've got Scrum teams essentially running in regular releases where they're continuously deploying stuff and they're working in a kind of 2-week cycle. When you have multiple teams, they have this idea of you working in what they call trains, agile release trains or arts. The idea is you have multiple teams working together, all working to the same kind of cadence. So working to the same kind of 2-week drumbeat of sprints running, and they try and plan work for all of those teams together in these roughly sort of 12 to 14 week cycles, basically. So you're getting everybody together in one big group to say, right, let's work out what we're doing for the next 12 to 14 weeks across all of our Scrum teams. Let's map that out super high level, understand where the dependencies are. You have all the developers and everyone in a room together to figure that out together, and everyone comes away with a common understanding of what they're trying to get done over that 12 to 14 weeks. So that's kind of how it's working, and that's what these release trains are. But what it also has wrapped around it is a whole load of guidance going right up to this top level here of working at the portfolio level. And what it's talking about here is saying we should be taking our strategic themes from the organization. We should be creating a vision board essentially at that point to say, what does that look like and what does that mean we will be doing? They've got this concept of lean budgets where you basically set up guardrails, say this is what we want to spend in different areas, this is at a high level how we want to spend it, and this is what the outcomes are. And you're, by creating those budgets and giving people guardrails, you're essentially delegating a lot of the responsibility for achieving those goals within those constraints to the teams. The idea is that you've not got somebody checking and balancing every single point through that 14 weeks. You're delegating that authority, and the team should be able to rock on and deliver as long as they're within the constraints that you've given them. Now, a few things about SAFE that I would say to you. Firstly, advocate an implementation roadmap to implement SAFE. Ironically, this, when you, there's not a picture on that page there, but when you do dive into this and take a look at it, you will see that it looks surprisingly linear and not very agile. They want to train everybody big bang and then implement it all at once. Personally, I would not advocate that approach. I would always advocate starting from where you are now and iteratively evolving from where you are now. The other thing is and this is not a criticism of SAFE, this is true of large agile, Scrum, disciplined agile, all of the other things out there. All of these have been built generically to try and work for a large set of organizations. They have not been built for your organization, your foibles, the journey you've been on so far, and where you want to get to. As expert PMO people, what you need to be doing, if your organization is talking about using SAFe or anything like that, take a look at it, understand it, and then work out which bits work for you, which bits don't work for you, and then make sure you're pulling in the right bits for your organization, because you will know your ways of working, your body of knowledge, your capacity and capability better than anybody from a consultancy selling you SAFe will be able to tell you. In the meantime, there is a lot of good stuff on here that is well worth you looking through, whether you're using SAFe or not using SAFe, or whether you're agile or not. When you play around with this site, you'll find you can click through on these things and learn a lot more about how everything works. So any click on here will take you through to more detail about what they mean by a release train, how they see that working across silos, how they avoid silos in their way of working, and what they believe release trains look like, and what they believe value streams look like, and everything. So I would urge you, even if you're not a SAFe shop, even if you've heard terrible things about it, dive in, have a look around, play around with it, learn some background on what they think is good, but then use your lens as PMO experts and experts in your organization to decide what of this is valuable, what will work in your organization, and which bits are just not right for you at this stage. There you go. That's SAFe, and hopefully we've busted the jargon around that one.
You're on mute, Lindsay.
It wouldn't be a Zoom call without somebody saying you're on mute at some point, would it? I'm just ticking that one off my little bingo list, and she's back. There we go.
Today, aren't I? Eileen asked an interesting question. Is it equivalent of a 12-14 week portfolio plan? Is it?
Yeah. So it's I mean, how you actually build it. If you imagine having a big wall, you'd map out the 2 weeks in sort of swim lane style. You'd be briefing everybody at the beginning and saying, okay, guys, here's what we're doing. At the very, very high level, this is what we want to achieve. You've got your senior architects, senior product people there describing strategically what we want to achieve in the next 12 to 14 weeks. Then you're getting the teams to work out how they're going to chunk that down, how they deliver that. And they're updating that board as they go. This is what we're going to do in week 1, week 2, sprint 3, sprint 4, and you're looking at what those dependencies are. So you might find you've got a piece of work that needs an architecture team to do some fundamental work. That would go into sprint 1. You find you can't start your bit till sprint 3. So yes, it's a portfolio plan essentially for that, hyper visible, where all the big difference is quite often when we do those, it's project managers planning them. The idea here in what they call PI planning is where they would get the developers and everybody in the room to work out how it's working together. So it's built a lot. Those plans are built from the ground up rather than from a project manager or portfolio manager down. I think that's the big emphasis they put on it.
Yeah, we also had a comment from somebody on LinkedIn who was watching live. They recommended the SAFe Agilist course as the one that's most accessible to PMO managers or PMO analysts that are interested in looking at that. So thanks for that insight. That's fantastic. So so let's move on then. So so this week we are it's a hot, soft skill. We sometimes drop these into some of the sessions. And Eileen, you're taking this one today. What's it all about?
I am. Well, I wanted to cover off learn, funnily enough. And it's really interesting because in the competency framework, we list this as a skill. And what's fascinating is people think, well, actually, how can learn be a skill? But it is a skill to actually, this ability to gain knowledge by study, instruction or experience. And I'm sure we all know somebody where we try to teach them or show them something and they're just not learning it all of the time. And I think as a PMO manager, you know, we talk about, we've talked on several occasions, you know, even the bit John's just done there, about actually finding out what's out there in the outside world, thinking about what is going to be useful within our organisation, and actually kind of taking the organisation on that journey, but we have to open ourselves and we have to develop this kind of skill of learning. And there's a great paper, Lindsay goes on to the next slide, there's a great paper that's been written by McKinsey's, and I love this this quote from it, is that learning itself is a skill, and the development of it is a critical driver of long-term career success. So we talk about an intentional learner and somebody who continues to do. You will have all have heard this kind of lifelong learning concept, and as a PMO professional, that's really what we're about. And as it says there, people who've mastered the mindsets and skills of effective learning can grow faster than their peers and gain more of the benefits from all of the learning opportunities that come their way. So, you know, if you're in the PMO, actually being a kind of very open in terms of learning new things has to be within your skill set, but also something you practically do. And the McKinsey paper does talk about this kind of concept of intentional learning, actually kind of going out, not just kind of soaking up things. You know, I'm very conscious we've got people who sit on our webinars, and we have a lot of people, you know, me included, I sit through lots of webinars out of, you know, kind of just a little bit of interest. But when they talk about kind of actually taking learning to the next level, it's about that intentionalness of actually kind of deciding you want to kind of learn something. And on the next, going to look at this because it's going to be a build up, and I'm going to trust her to build it up as I kind of speak through this. Yes. So it always starts with curiosity. Now, again, we've talked about this several times, that actually being curious is a really important attribute of people who work in a PMO. And that curiosity then kind of drives you to go on to the next stage, cue Lindsay, where we actually go and have some kind of exploratory play. Now, the important bit is that, you know, this exploration play is really is that intentional, where we set some goals, we know exactly what we're going to learn. And I think one of the interesting things about learning is not about saying, you know, I'm going to learn about agile development, but actually be kind of quite specific in terms of what you want to learn and what the outcomes of that learning are, which you want it to be. And then we would then go away and actually have some kind of what we would call kind of some meaningful experience. We want to go and actually kind of give it a go. Now, this might mean we learn a bit of agile, we learn a bit of SAFe, and we try and practice that. When I have taught kind of project management in the past, I've gone away and said to, you know, particularly people coming into project management for the first time, just practice planning your Christmas dinner. Actually kind of do the whole kind of Gantt chart, because actually kind of planning those skills, really getting under the skin, not just looking at it and thinking, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I know how that works. You actually have some kind of meaningful experience. Now, what might happen is actually, if we kind of go on the next bit, is actually there might be some failure. And it's really easy to kind of give up at this point. But what actually drives us, if you kind of do another couple of taps, Lindsay, is actually our passion for learning, our passion for making a difference should actually drive us to kind of go back to have a bit more exploratory play and actually do that meaningful experience, which means we can then complete the learning journey. Because what that then goes on to, as Lindsay will show us any second now, is that actually we get some enlightenment. You know, when you get that the penny's dropped, right, now I actually understand. And you know what John was saying before, we can go on the SAFe course, but actually it's only when we've practiced, when we've looked at it and played with it in our particular organisation, do we have that kind of enlightenment that says, right, then exactly how we want to kind of use that, or make a conscious decision not to use it in our organisation. And then the final bit there is that actually, yes, we've actually kind of satisfied our need, or kind of that objective of setting out the learning, and actually we feel empowered then to be able to kind of go and use it. And I think a lot of people, when they kind of look at their kind of whole learning piece, kind of stop at the curiosity. They don't really kind of plan out the kind of the structure of their learning. And as you know, we've got the competency framework reiterated around not just from ourselves but from McKinsey, and also this piece here in terms by Sasha Oz, in terms of actually kind of planning through your learning, what you're going to hope to do with it. And what I really like, particularly in this model, it's our passion for the subject area in terms of kind of PMO, our passion for improving project and program delivery in our organisation, that actually kind of keeps us in there until we've actually kind of got something useful for our organisation.
Okay,
so a skill for us all to develop.
Well, I know you've enjoyed putting that together as well. I think it's again, I think meaningful learning, and the fact that you talk about that we often stop at curiosity. I totally agree with that. And comment here that I feel like you're on a constant journey of learning, and that encouraging team members to do the same, and saying, I realise that I can't learn everything, but between us we can share and learn so much more. And that's what we encourage a lot with our members and also corporate members, that if everybody can't get to every session that we're doing, they get at least one person there that then feeds back to everybody else, is a step in the right direction at the very least. So thank you very much. So it's hot or not, it's the regular feature, the one that drives all three of us pretty much insane, because what is it going to be this week? So I think first up, John, it is template therapy.
Therapy. I've been doing quite a bit with this month. We at HotPMO, we've been building and evolving our what we call the vault, which is where we sort of keep our sort of templates and documentation and those kind of things. And I've been sort of going back through and sort of updating some templates and things. And if you haven't done this for a while, I really recommend making some time to do it. I found it quite therapeutic, because I think the mindset you get yourself into forces you to step out of the day-to-day running of the PMO and all the issues that are hitting you today, and allow you to sort of move to dare I say, a higher plane of existence. And I know that sounds weird when I'm talking about risk logs, right? But honestly, because what you're doing, you're looking at a template thinking, right, what should this template be? What does it need to include? You're then going wider, thinking, what are the edge cases? Let me think about my many years of experience of dealing with projects and people. I think, what's gone wrong? What's not worked? How's it tripped over? And you're sort of doing that kind of audit and reflection on what's happened in the past and how that should apply to this template that you've got. And then you're thinking about how people might use it in the future. And just when you've got to that point, you're flipping it around and thinking, who's my audience and how are they going to benefit from this? Not just my audience, but if it's a project manager's template, what will their audience be looking at from that? I've been doing a lot of this over the last couple of weeks, and I found it really, I've called it template therapy, because it really has felt therapeutic to take that time out to look at things from that wider, broader, holistic perspective, and try and create something that will genuinely help people move themselves forwards and accelerate the business. So if you've not played with templates for a while, I know most people tend to look at the PMO and think, oh, template police, and give it a bad, and it's got a bad reputation from that side. But I highly recommend, if you've not played with this before, take some time out, look at the templates that you use now, whether they're in a PPM tool or Excel or wherever they are, and go back and look at those and get yourself into that Zen state of mind, and think about how you can improve the organization with your templates, but also how a bit of template therapy could help you.
Lovely. I've had to do one this morning, which is why I'm not on my game. I think I've just got lost in template wonderfulness. So Eileen, PMO transformations. Look at that on the Yellow Brick Road.
Oh, indeed. Well, this has become really interesting. Now, we will have all have heard of the PMOs die after 2 years. They get challenged and they kind of just tail off. And actually, what's been really interesting, apart from that, kind of incorporated all of those temporary project officers that should shut. So I'm not going to kind of go on about that. But actually, what we're starting to see now is PMOs recognise the PMO life cycle, where actually you set it up and run it, but actually there's a transform step in the PMO life cycle. Is that whatever PMO you set up is there and is will be absolutely right for your organisation, but potentially has a kind of a half-life, because as the organisation moves on, and we've talked about kind of the VUCA environment we all work within, we're going to have to kind of continually to invent and reinvent our PMOs. We're going to have to continually revisit our service catalogue to make sure that we kind of move with the organisation. It was interesting this week, I was having a conversation with somebody, and I tell this story when I was there, is that actually we've got the PMO and it works, it does everything we need, and then don't recognise that within kind of 2, 3, 4 months and at least kind of 6 months, that actually it now should be something different. And we're having an awful lot more people not shutting down PMOs, but actually kind of taking this step into transforming their PMO. And what that also has a knock-on effect is that PMO managers, we often said, spend a lot of their time actually delivering services. So they're actually, their PMO management activity is probably 20% of their time, and 80% of their time they're another PMO analyst who are kind of delivering services. And what we need to start seeing is more PMO managers who spend their time thinking about, is our PMO right for the organisation? You know, kind of how long can we stay in our current format and still be relevant? What changes do we need to start looking at down the line? And it's great to say that, you know, there was quite a few people at the conference were talking not about kind of shutting the PMO down or creating a new PMO, but actually kind of going through this PMO transformation. So let's see more of us on that yellow brick road.
Yeah. Excellent. And mine this time is Portfolio Office. Sorry, the picture looks gloomy, but I just said, you know, an umbrella over an organization, wonderful image generation from AI. But I did actually get wet through this morning as well, because it's miserable here weather-wise. However, Portfolio Office, and a bit related to, you know, what Eileen's talking about there, done a lot of conversations recently with people that are becoming members or, you know, corporate members, and asking them about, you know, where are they at right now? What's, you know, some of the pain points, what is it that they're focusing on? And there's a lot more of this. There's a lot more of the Portfolio Office stuff that's coming out in terms of trying to move where their focus is, and again kind of transforming you know, where they are, but basically being pushed by this whole problem that they've got about how they are perceived in terms of the value that they're adding to the organization, and seeing that Portfolio Office and looking at what that is all about, allowing them to move up and to be in that kind of EPMO, enterprise PMO type space, is kind of going hand to hand. And there's a lot more of it going on, and it's fantastic to see. So yeah, a little bit similar to Eileen's, but just to, I think, to reiterate that, you know, from conversations right now, it's definitely you know, the Portfolio Office is seen as being a potential solution to this problem of does the PMO add value? So yes, it does. So let's move on to the what's not right now. So John, this is yours.
Me first again. Yeah. So apparently I was getting very into 3-letter acronyms when I gave you this one. This was standing for sort of business as usual, not my problem. And it's a mindset I've seen in a few PMOs where the PMO is very focused on the work that's happening in the projects and has no eyes whatsoever on the running of the business and the operational side of things. Now, we're in a world now where we're seeing more and more those two things are coming together, where you've got continuous delivery sort of models in place, where you've got things like Kanban being used a lot by organizations. The team that are delivering your projects are also teams that are delivering operational work and the day-to-day stuff that needs to happen as well. And when that's happening, you cannot afford to ignore the BAU stuff, because if you're ignoring the BAU stuff, you've got no idea what the right amount of time to be allocated to projects is in your organization. So if you imagine you've got if you're looking across a portfolio, you're probably pulling people in to do project work in different places. Those people will never, or very rarely, be purely focused on the project. They will be doing a little bit of a day job, keeping something alive, maintaining something, communication around day job things coming into the mailbox and things like that. If we're just ignoring that, it ends up being a whole load of hidden work. The best thing we can do for organizations to help the organization accelerate is do what PMOs do best, which is make that visible, surface it, show everybody what's happening, and then have an informed discussion about it. So my challenge to you is, within the delivery teams in your organization, are you clear on how much of their work is work done for projects and how much of it is operational? And if you don't know that, how could you find out? And once you've got that, what do people think that percentage is in your organization? and what do they think it should be? And if you can have those kind of conversations, it suddenly gets quite interesting. Are we doing a greater percentage of work being keeping the lights on and running operational things than we thought we were? Or are we doing more project work than we thought we were? And what do people think that balance should be? What should it be for certain teams? Should it be higher or lower? And if you've got that kind of conversation going, you could even move it into saying, for our project work, is the bulk of that on strategic items, or is that on keeping the lights on and dealing with regulations? And then you're sort of splitting that again there, saying, what do these percentages look like for our teams? Is it a third on BAU, a third on strategic, a third on just keeping the lights on projects? And as you build that view, you can have really, really informed conversations with the business about where those priorities lie and how we should be adjusting those going forwards. So don't ignore the BAU stuff. It very definitely should be your problem, because it will help you allocate resources effectively and make sure the organization is using people optimally.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I had a good comment there from Robert. I asked my team to estimate these amounts on their weekly status reports. A free slice pie chart amongst operations, innovation, and chaos. So,
I love chaos.
So, Eileen, look at this sinister one.
I know. I'm just typing in a comment there from John's, because it just made me think. Right then. So yes, the faceless PMO. Right then, and I'm really sorry. You know how you should never offend your audience. Perhaps I might be offending the audience now. So as you can imagine, Lindsay and I do an awful lot of webinars. We spend an awful lot of our time on Teams and Zoom, and you know, there are some people, and we're always always happy to see people's kind of smiley faces, and we're always grateful for people who put their cameras on. But we do recognise that there are situations where people don't feel comfortable have their camera on. At lunchtime, most people are kind of scoffing their lunches. But it's actually really quite difficult to talk to a white font of somebody's name. And I want to just encourage people, if you're not going to have your camera on, please can you put a picture of yourself or your dog, yes, or of anything, yes, on your account. So actually what we still see is a whole range of smiley faces, and it just makes it much easier to present. I mean, they don't move unless you can put a GIF up there, which I don't think you can now. But it would be really good if we could all kind of put some face, or even a logo from our PMO with anything. So when our cameras off, because I think if I turn my camera off, if people can see it, if I turn my camera off, yes, we have an I Love PMO sticker. Now, even that's better than just kind of a name. So I'm just going to encourage everybody to do that over the next kind of 7 days. So that's another follow-up challenge and I'm going to be checking next month for everybody who's kind of logged on to the Zoom element of the meeting.
Yeah. And you know, you couldn't, as Lorna said, you could actually just use avatars instead, which seemed to be a new feature in Teams that certainly people here in the office have been messing about with, trying to find their perfect avatar.
We've got somebody did us, what did they do as a pixelated versions of Lindsay and I?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Okay, Amanda, my final one is the Hawthorne effect. I don't know if anybody's heard about this. I was just reading the newspaper here in the UK just last week about workplace productivity and the problem that we still seem to be having in terms of this balance between working at home, being in the office, and the Hawthorne effect was something that was mentioned in the article, which was it's actually a telephone equipment company back in the 1920s that were trying to improve workplace productivity, and they did a number of things. They did things like more lighting in the place. We saw productivity go up. They saw adding shorter breaks into the day, more frequent breaks, and reducing the length of the working day. All of these things had what they call the Hawthorne effect, which is productivity goes up, but very quickly it also goes down. And what they found, the economists at that time, were actually it's the change itself that has that effect. So that's the effect on the productivity. But of course, we all know that change slowly becomes embedded, and therefore productivity, you know, just goes down, or it goes back to what normal productivity levels might be. I just thought it was really interesting in that, you know, I think this is what is coming out now with a lot more of the updated research post-pandemic about what is actually happening in terms of workplaces and what companies are actually seeing in terms of productivity lessons. It's not all, I do know for, that some companies are stipulating that everybody wants to be, back in the office again. But of course, we also kind of recognise that, workplace, do we keep people happy in terms of their, their working lives? People don't want to rush back to being stuck on trains and doing that awful commute anymore. It's trying to find the balance. And I think what is interesting and certainly want to keep an eye out on is, what is some of this research that's going to be coming out? What is it going to be saying? And how will that have an effect on our organisations and the way that management might see in terms of people working? So the Hawthorne effect, it's about, you see short-term gains, which are mainly due to, a particular change. And that's what they're seeing now. Now the pandemic is well back in the rear view mirror. So, Eileen, we're over to you. It's a little bit of interactivity this time, rather than somebody in our hot seat, which will be back next month. Take it away.
And I'm looking at the clock thinking we've got 8 minutes to do this. Now, let me just tell you why we did this. We often get asked at the House of PMO, what's a good tool? Oh, look, Mo's got a picture as well. Beautiful picture, Mo. I'm more interested now in people's pictures. We often get asked, can you recommend a tool? Can you recommend a system that we use in our organisation? And where, we want to, and I think quite rightly, remain agnostic and say, there's lots of different tools out there. But I think where we really need some kind of, people need help, or members need help, and this is one of the areas where I think we can kind of help each other, is start thinking about the process of getting a tool and some of the challenges with getting the tool. So just to kind of forewarn people, I've got a couple of Mentimeter slides where we're going to be taking your input in today. We're going to struggle to have it a long, meaningful talk, but I do think it's going to kind of provide the start of another kind of bigger session. So without further ado, I am just going to share my screen with you because so first of all, you'll need to kind of go into Mentimeter. Look, there's a QR code. Now I've learned what one of those is. I was curious and found out. So there's a QR code there. What I'd like you to do, and it's not just people on Zoom, people kind of wherever you're watching us from, can go off to Mentimeter. And if you've not got a tool yet, but you want one, I'm curious in terms of what do you want a tool for? Yes, what do you think you're going to use it for? In your organisation. Now that could be a process. It could show. It could be for a particular kind of just to record some information from. So there we go. So we've got some started. When you hit enter, we'll just see them coming up on the screen. Okay. So I'm not bothered whether you're looking for a tool or whether you've actually kind of got a tool. I'm curious as to kind of what do you want those kind of tools for? How do you think they're going to be used? So interesting, we've gone from reporting, which is kind of a potentially a retrospective view of kind of where we've been, but live reporting actually kind of does something different. Unsurprisingly, we've got kind of resource management up there. We've got a couple of sessions on kind of resource management. Okay, so we've got kind of 10 responses there. I am kind of very conscious of the time. And so I'm just going to go on to the next slide, which hopefully should now come up on your wherever you're at. And why do you think having a tool is going to be the answer? What do you think a tool is going to actually kind of solve for you? So there's one thing in terms of we want to use it, but kind of how do you think you might be able to sell it, or how did you sell it to the organisation to kind of justify getting it on board? It might be kind of instead of getting an extra person, yes, too many, but don't we just love a spreadsheet? I always kind of think we can get rid of spreadsheets when finance get rid of this. So interestingly, in terms of what we want, rework and duration of contributions, yes, so that kind of on site, ease of communication, it's always on. One-stop shop for documents. So interesting in terms of you can kind of see where there's we're going to be looking at kind of different types of tools. And again, one of the things that we've talked about a lot recently is this kind of whole kind of concept of AI. So actually interesting, there's quite a bit there around document management. So we've got some interesting aspects of those. And kind of the whole kind of scenario planning. So we've got 11 responses up there. Sorry, I'm flying through it, but we'll collect this and then we'll kind of play it back for you. So what I'm going to do now is just go on to, you'll have to bear with me while I kind of do this magical bit with many, and I apologize, we've now got a different QR code for this one because I'm only allowed 2 questions. What's stopping you get a tool? Or I've implemented a number of tools in my organization, and trying to get kind of buy-in for people to kind of understand the benefits was the biggest one. But when you are implementing your tool, or you're currently desperately trying to get the organization to kind of buy in, have a tool, what are the biggest barriers to actually kind of getting the tool and implementing the tool? We talk, this whole kind of concept of AI is about having data, but it may be because actually we can't agree the process. Oh, they say that's an interesting one. Again, going back to kind of having a no PMO. So you end up that, when we talked about that, that was the not hot last month in terms of not having that enterprise PMO, so not being able to get that. Funding. Interestingly, that the PMs were against it. That's again an interesting aspect in terms of what's required. Okay, so there's a few more in there, and then the final slide that we just want some input in is, how are you, or did you overcome those barriers? So what did you do? What did you say? What did you create? Who did you get into influence to actually overcome those barriers? So we might have a smaller set of answers here, because these are really for the people who have kind of successfully implemented tools in their organization. What was it that kind of took you over that tipping point to actually kind of get the tool into the organization? Yes. Oh, I don't know who wrote that. I showed the resistors how they no longer had a seat at the table. Yes, excellent. That's an interesting one. Excellent. So there's a bit of selling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of take these, and we're going to create something on kind of LinkedIn to get a little bit more feedback from the people who did those. So if you've got more to say on it and want to kind of feed into a bigger session, this will actually allow us to do that without necessarily kind of talking about kind of specific tools. So 4 questions. Now, one of the things that I would say, and I know Lindsay's going to tell me off for timing in a minute, is that this is exactly why we want to kind of, and how the House of PMO can kind of use the community to kind of learn from each other. So you might be in a completely different organization, but some of these kind of tactics and strategies to overcome the barriers are not necessarily dependent on a particular tool, or kind of work with a particular provider, or necessarily for a particular amount of money or process. So hopefully we can kind of start pulling out some of those and create some help for those of you who are looking for tools. Right then, so
thank you very much.
There we go, short and sweet.
Yeah, and so we've just got a couple of minutes. So just to wind up for today, so we have got obviously Edinburgh coming up. We've got our we're starting our rerun of different competitions, so people can win a ticket. That's the latest one. Just head on to the website. You'll be able to see that on our banner on the front page. PMO on holes, and there's an opportunity there if you want to share some pictures on social media and get yourself a ticket, and you'll be able to go and see Alan. And Lorna will be there too, so you'll be able to see at least those 2 people that are on this session today in the flesh, in person. We've also got a couple of events coming up in the next couple of weeks. It is the evolving role and roles of the PMO. There's a lot going on there in terms of the changes that have happened and are happening in terms of the different roles in PMO. And also we're going to kick off a little series which is focusing on the PMO competency framework, looking at knowledge, skills and behaviours sessions, and we'll kick off with skills for practitioners. Go and have a look at the events page, everybody, and hopefully we'll see you at a session in the summer, certainly here in the Northern Hemisphere in the summer, and still talking PMOs. But for now, thank you very much, John and Eileen, hopefully, and everybody who joined us here in the audience and out there on LinkedIn and YouTube. Take care for now. We'll see you next time.